Ladies and gentlemen, a storm has erupted in Southeast Asia, and its echoes are being felt as far away as Washington, Brussels, and beyond. The name at the center of this storm is none other than Indonesia's president, Prabowo Subianto. Known for his fiery character, military background, and nationalist stance, Prabowo has once again made global headlines. His latest warning directed at neighboring Timor Leste has not only shaken the corridors of power in Dili, the capital of Timor Leste, but has also left policymakers in America and Europe scratching their heads in disbelief. What exactly did Prabowo say? Why has his message triggered such shockwaves across the world? And what could be the consequences of this brewing storm in Southeast Asia? Let's uncover the story step by step. To understand the intensity of the current drama, we must take a brief look at history. Timor Leste, also known as East Timor, was once a Portuguese colony. After Portugal withdrew in 1975, Indonesia quickly moved in and annexed the territory, citing both geopolitical and security concerns. For more than 2 decades, East Timor remained under Indonesian control, until a UN-backed referendum in 1999 gave the people a choice. In a landmark vote, the overwhelming majority opted for independence, sparking violence, international intervention, and finally, Timor Leste's emergence as a sovereign nation in 2002. Ever since, relations between Jakarta and Dili have been fragile, sometimes cooperative, sometimes tense. Indonesia, the regional giant, has always seen Timor Leste through a prism of strategic security, while Timor Leste, a small but proud nation, has consistently asserted its independence and sovereignty. Now, with Prabowo Subianto in power, these relations have entered a new and unpredictable phase. In a statement that electrified the media, Prabowo warned Timor Leste against any steps that could destabilize the region or undermine Indonesia's interests. His words were blunt, his tone uncompromising. Indonesia will not tolerate actions that threaten its sovereignty or the peace of Southeast Asia. Any such moves will be met with a firm response. The message was loud and clear: Indonesia, under Prabowo's leadership, is ready to flex its muscles if necessary. For a man with a decorated military past, this was not just political rhetoric, it carried the weight of conviction. The timing of this warning is equally significant. Timor Leste has been pushing hard for full membership in ASEAN, the regional bloc dominated by economic heavyweights like Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. While Indonesia has publicly expressed support for Timor Leste's aspirations, some analysts believe that Jakarta also fears increased foreign influence in its backyard. Timor Leste has close ties with Western powers, particularly Australia, and this could complicate Indonesia's regional dominance. Prabowo's tough stance may have been triggered by intelligence reports suggesting growing Western presence and influence in Timor Leste's defense and economic sectors. As Prabowo's remarks circulated in the media, Washington and Brussels reacted with surprise and concern. In the United States, foreign policy think tanks quickly convened emergency meetings to analyze the implications of his statement. The Indo-Pacific region is already a hotbed of competition between the US and China, and Indonesia plays a crucial role as the world's 4th most populous nation and a maritime giant. American analysts feared that Prabowo's confrontational tone could push Timor Leste to seek even closer ties with Western allies, further complicating the geopolitical chessboard. Officials in Washington were left wondering, is Indonesia signaling a shift towards a more nationalist and independent foreign policy, less aligned with Western priorities? In Brussels, the mood was equally unsettled. The European Union has been cultivating relations with both Indonesia and Timor Leste, seeing the region as a vital trade partner and a source of strategic resources. A potential conflict between the two neighbors threatens not just peace, but also European economic interests. Several EU diplomats privately expressed alarm, noting that Southeast Asia's stability is essential for global shipping routes and international supply chains. Europe has always promoted dialogue and mediation, but Prabowo's fiery warning has complicated the usual diplomatic script. Meanwhile, Timor Leste's leadership responded cautiously but firmly. Within hours of Prabowo's statement making global headlines, the Timorese government called a press conference in Dili. Standing before a hall packed with reporters, a government spokesperson declared, "Timor Leste is a peaceful nation. We are committed to building harmony in the region. But let it be clear, we will never compromise our sovereignty or independence." The response was carefully calibrated. respectful towards Indonesia but unyielding on matters of national pride. For a small country that fought bitterly for its independence, the idea of bowing to external pressure is simply unacceptable. The international media wasted no time amplifying the drama. On CNN, bold headlines declared, Indonesia's Prabowo issues stern warning to Timor Leste, tensions rise in Southeast Asia. The BBC ran a detailed report highlighting the historical baggage between the two nations and warning of possible escalation. Japanese and Australian newspapers picked up the story with urgency, pointing out that instability in Timor Leste could have spillover effects for the entire Pacific. Australia, in particular, has significant interests in Timor Leste, ranging from energy exploration to security cooperation, and Canberra was watching the situation with unease. Interestingly, Chinese media outlets took a very different approach. State-backed commentators in Beijing argued that the West was deliberately stoking tensions in Southeast Asia, and that Asian nations should resolve their disputes internally without outside interference. By portraying Prabowo's statement as an assertion of regional autonomy, Chinese outlets tried to position Indonesia closer to China's orbit, subtly hinting that Beijing understands Jakarta's concerns better than Washington or Brussels ever could. But perhaps the most startling development came from within Indonesia itself. Reports began to emerge of heightened military activity near the border regions with Timor Leste. While Indonesian officials insisted these were routine exercises, the timing was impossible to ignore. Convoys of military vehicles were spotted, and local residents reported increased helicopter activity in the skies. The message was unmistakable. Prabowo was backing his words with a visible show of force. Analysts noted that this was classic Prabowo, never one to shy away from projecting strength, especially when national security is at stake. For America and Europe, the sight of Indonesia flexing its military muscle so close to Timor Leste was deeply unsettling. U.S. defense officials quietly expressed concern that even a small miscalculation could spark a border clash, leading to wider instability in the Indo-Pacific. European analysts, meanwhile, pointed out that a confrontation between Indonesia and Timor Leste could invite external actors, perhaps even China, into the fray, thereby altering the delicate balance of power in the region. The prospect of an ASEAN member, or aspiring member, embroiled in conflict was exactly the kind of crisis the West wanted to avoid. Behind the scenes, diplomatic channels were buzzing. Australia reportedly offered to mediate, while several ASEAN states called for calm. Yet Prabowo remained defiant. In a follow-up interview, he doubled down on his warning, saying, Indonesia is a peaceful nation, but peace does not mean weakness. We will defend our sovereignty at all costs. Such words may have been intended for a domestic audience, reinforcing his image as a strong, nationalistic leader, but they also resonated far beyond Indonesia's borders. What makes this episode particularly explosive is the broader geopolitical context. The Indo-Pacific is already a region under immense strain, with the US and its allies trying to counter China's growing influence. Indonesia, strategically located and rich in resources, is a key player in this game. Prabowo's assertive stance towards Timor Leste could signal a new, more independent Indonesian foreign policy, one that does not automatically align with either Washington or Beijing. For America and Europe, that uncertainty is deeply troubling. As the days passed, speculation grew over what might come next. Would Prabowo escalate further by imposing economic measures or tightening border controls? Would Timor Leste seek greater support from Australia or the United Nations? Could ASEAN step in to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control? Commentators across the globe debated these questions, each offering different scenarios. Some believed the tension would fizzle out after a few weeks of diplomatic maneuvering, while others feared it could snowball into a larger crisis, drawing in external powers and reshaping the geopolitics of Southeast Asia. In Jakarta, Prabowo's supporters rallied behind him. Nationalist voices praised his courage and accused Western media of exaggerating the situation. They argued that Indonesia, as a sovereign state, had every right to safeguard its interests and issue warnings when necessary. Critics, however, cautioned that inflammatory rhetoric could damage Indonesia's image as a leader of ASEAN and undermine its credibility as a regional stabilizer. For Prabowo, the balancing act was delicate: project strength at home, but avoid international isolation abroad. For Timor Leste, the challenge was equally daunting. The small nation has always relied on international goodwill and partnerships to maintain its stability and development. Alienating Indonesia, its giant neighbor, could prove disastrous, yet appearing submissive could undermine its hard-won independence. Thus, Dili walked a fine line, carefully choosing its words while quietly strengthening its diplomatic outreach to allies like Australia, Portugal, and the United States. As the world watches closely, one thing is clear: Prabowo's warning to Timor Leste has opened a new chapter in Southeast Asian politics. Whether it ends in confrontation, compromise, or cooperation will depend on how skillfully both sides navigate the days and weeks ahead. But for now, America and Europe remain stunned, trying to decode the meaning behind Prabowo's words, and wondering whether they have just witnessed the beginning of a new era of Indonesian assertiveness. This is more than a regional dispute; it is a story about national pride, global geopolitics, and the clash between small and large states in a rapidly changing world. Prabowo Subianto has made his move, Timor Leste has responded with dignity, and the international community is holding its breath. The coming months will determine whether Southeast Asia moves closer to peace, or plunges into a storm of uncertainty.